Thanks, Kelly, and thank you to everyone that's here today with us in Kemptville, Ontario, Canada, and thank you to those of you that are joining us online. For me, it's an immense pleasure to see so many familiar faces with us and to be connected with so many other partners from around the world in so many different time zones. So thank you for joining us late or early, depending on where you are. I'm not going to say much here in this opening session other than to say we're halfway. We're halfway through the IMFN Global Forum here in Ontario. We're halfway to 2030. A series of goals, challenges, commitments have been made by countries, by the world, and by individual actors. And many will say we can't. Many will say we can't get there, that it's impossible. But this week, and today in particular, you'll see a series of examples, including this opening plenary, that say we can, we are, and there is a way. And you'll see positive examples to show us the path to help us get to 2030 on the road to COP30 in Belém coming up later this year. And so without further ado from my side, I thought I would introduce our first keynote speaker who's going to be joining us by video. And so I'd like to give the moment now over to the CEO of C4 ICRAF and the Director General of ICRAF.
Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to welcome you both in person and online to Forests, People, Planet. Thank you for being part of this shared space for dialogue, learning, and action. I would like to begin by extending deep appreciation to our partners and donors who made this event possible: the Ontario Woodlot Association, the Eastern Ontario Model Forest, and the International Model Forest Network, in partnership with the Government of Canada. Your support and commitment to forest stewardship are essential to the change we seek. We are at a pivotal moment. The year is 2025, exactly halfway to the 2030 targets for climate, biodiversity, land restoration, and sustainable development. And yet, despite progress in some areas, we are not where we hope to be. The world continues to grapple with the intersecting crises of climate change, biodiversity loss, food insecurity, and inequity. But amidst this polycrisis, there is also hope, and it is growing. Across landscapes and continents, we are sowing the seeds of transformation. We see it in local leadership rising to meet global challenges, and we see it in bold scientific innovation, in new policy pathways, and in financial mechanisms that are beginning to shift toward equity and regeneration. Forests, trees, and agroforestry systems, especially when stewarded by those who live in and with them, are emerging as some of the most powerful levers we have to drive this transformation. At C4 ICRAF, we believe forest stewardship must be participatory, rooted in place and centered on people. This is how we bridge the gap between environmental urgency and social justice. Participatory landscape approaches are at the heart of this. They help us navigate trade-offs between land uses. They bring together local knowledge and science, and they foster long-term ownership and accountability for outcomes that endure beyond projects and political cycles. These approaches address climate, biodiversity, and inequity specifically and respond to all of them at once. They dismantle silos and build equity across scales, from field to finance, from policy to practice. And they unlock benefits that are both measurable, like increased carbon storage, biodiversity and livelihoods, and immeasurable: trust, cohesion, dignity, and resilience. To make this work matter at scale, we must act with courage and clarity. We must invest in community-led integrated landscape initiatives. We must shift climate and biodiversity finance to support bottom-up forest stewardship. We must embed rights, participation, and equity into every layer of policy and practice. And we must elevate voices of women, youth, Indigenous peoples, and smallholders, not just as stakeholders, but as leaders and decision makers. This gathering is an opportunity to strengthen the partnerships that will make all of this possible, to move from extractive models to regenerative systems, from top-down decision-making to co-governance rooted in place and shared purpose. Let's use these days together to listen deeply, to challenge assumptions, and to collectively build models of forest stewardship that are truly inclusive, just, and transformative. I wish you fruitful discussions, meaningful connections, and renewed energy as we work together to shape a future where forests, people, and the planet can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you for the inspiring words, the welcome, and for those of us here in Ottawa, it's a nice way to wake up and start our day. And for those joining online, I'd like to encourage you to find a way to engage and start learning about the biographies of our next speakers that are coming up through the online platform. And for those in the room are free to do so as well. So without too much further introduction, I'd like to welcome to the stage Pierre Jonathan Teasdale, who's the Director of the Trade and International Affairs Division within the Canadian Forest Service here in Ottawa at Natural Resources Canada. PJ, I invite you to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's an honor. Je suis très heureux d'être ici. Un de mes privilèges au Service canadien des forêts, c'est de pouvoir travailler avec l'équipe le réseau des forêts modèles, et j'en suis très reconnaissant. Un grand merci également aux organisateurs de cet événement qui est définitivement un succès et qui va au-delà de nos attentes. Today I want to talk about model forests and the role of local and regional actions in achieving global goals. This year holds special significance for forests around the world. We note that there's COP30 in Brazil in the fall. And as noted by previous speakers, we're also getting close to 2030. So 2030 isn't just a marker in time, it's an important checkpoint for commitments like Agenda 2030 and the Glasgow Leaders Declaration on forests. So these are global goals, but we all know that their success depends on local and regional leadership. And Campville is a good example of that. Campville is at the heart of the Eastern Ontario Model Forest, a founding member of the IMFN since 1992, with more than 30 years of hands-on experience in sustainable management. It's a community deeply rooted in forests and agriculture, which reflects what model forests are all about. A model forest is built on inclusive partnerships that span large landscapes. These often bring together local communities, Indigenous peoples, government, landowners, academia, NGOs, and industry, all working together, side by side. And right now, there's a lot of momentum behind the International Model Forest Network. Today, there's more than 60 model forests in over 30 countries, covering more than 70 million hectares of landscape. Nearly 90 million people live and work within these landscapes. Among the many global initiatives on forests and sustainability, the IMFN stands out because of its diversity of partnerships and its ability to connect local efforts to global pledges. Model forests offer real and measurable solutions, helping implement international, national, and local policy goals in ways that are tailored to each landscape. They're also practical and responsive to community needs. For example, from wildfire training in Brazil's Pantanal model forest to sustainable livelihoods and ecosystem protection around the world. These partnerships deliver results. One example is our Restauration program. Restauration was launched in response to widespread wildland fire in Latin America. And between 2020 and 2024, 10 model forests across 7 countries carried out post-fire restoration projects, advanced women leadership, and strengthened local capacity for ecosystem recovery. The impact of Restauration demonstrates what's possible. And it's also one of the reasons why the Government of Canada announced an additional investment in 2022 of over 18 million Canadian dollars over 4 years to scale up forest and landscape restoration efforts globally. Already this support is helping equip the new generation of forest leaders with tools to address the climate and biodiversity crises. And looking ahead, the IMFN is very well positioned to continue turning political pledges into on-the-ground action. As we mark this midpoint on the road to 2030, and with COP30 on the horizon, gatherings like today are essential. They give us a chance to share what's working, to learn from each other, and to build on our successes. It's really fitting that today brings together both the Global Landscape Forum and the IMFN, two organizations that excel at convening diverse voices and highlighting practical solutions. We'll hear many examples throughout the day of the kinds of actions, investments, and partnerships that we need moving forward. And once again, it's a real privilege to be part of this event today, and I really look forward to the conversation. Merci beaucoup à tous, et je vous souhaite une très belle journée et un très bon événement. Merci.
Thanks, PJ, for helping welcome us here in Ottawa. Thank you for your leadership as you help us through Canada's Global Forest Leadership Program and other initiatives of model forests. But as I mentioned in the opening, this is a discussion throughout today here in Kemptville and online about model forests and other landscape initiatives coming together, just as the Global Landscape Forum did in Warsaw, bringing together Forest Day and Agricultural Day to come together for the first Landscape Day, bringing together diverse groups that need to speak to each other, to hear and understand each other with translation, with a difference in dialogue, with a difference in definitions to figure out what needs to be done. And so I think we have the right panel here with us this morning to help start that conversation. I'll first introduce the members of the panel, and then once I've given all their names, I'll ask them to come up to the stage. The opening plenary panel now is going to be joined by Damas Cajasa, Professor and Director of the Master's Program of Agroforestry at the University of Laval here in Canada, Fernando Carrera from CACHE in the Climate Action Unit and the General Manager of the Latin American Model Forest Network based in Costa Rica, Christophe Bessier, FAO-FLR Mechanism Coordinator and the Senior Forestry Advisor, Eunice Babacon, Mayor of Paraná, Samara Province and Philippines and representative of the Ulat Watershed Model Forest, and Laura Makwana, GLFX Nairobi's Coordinator and Stakeholder Engagement with Evidence Associate at the Center at C4 ICRAF. So I'd like to welcome you to come up to the stage and join me in the chairs. So just as we get started here this morning, I want to make sure that the audio is working well, so I'll just take a signal from the back if we do have any challenges and remind us all to speak with a little bit of distance from the microphone. But I think we have a closeness here on the stage together here today, which is nice and a good way to start off the conversation. And you know, we had a digital forum about a month ago on the margins of GLF forests in Bonn that many folks joined online from, and I know Laura was here with us when that began. And I know as well that there was a very visual description that was brought out that highlighted a number of the themes that the speakers from Model Forests and other initiatives had in that forum in Bonn. And what I liked about that, and for those in the room, you saw it walking in, and there's ways to interact with it. And here on the stage, we can see a version of it as well. But Laura, you were there in person, and I'm just wondering as we start into our conversation here today and starting off a conversation about examples of what were there, you have a depth of experience, and I'm just wondering, What did you take away from the digital forum, or do you have solutions that you've seen through your various work with GLFX Nairobi and with C4 ICRAF? What comes to mind for you when we think about being halfway there and positive examples?
Thanks a lot. I think what stood out for me during the digital forum that we had in April was the whole issue about benefit sharing for communities that are involved in restoration. It's really important for them as the communities that are actively engaged in restoration on the ground to share in the benefits and having secure rights over some of these benefits as well. So I think that's one key thing that stood out for me. And in terms of success stories, what I've seen on the ground and from GLFX Nairobi experience, what we're trying to do as a success story and trying to embrace that is leveraging the power of faith-based networks when it comes to land restoration, for climate change, for biodiversity. And why faith-based networks, you may ask, why we're trying to integrate that is, especially in the African context, faith leaders have, and also globally, depending on where, but faith leaders have a huge influence on people, faith, faith-based organizations and institutions have the networks and structures that are required to mobilize people around restoration. And a great example of that is the Catholics with the Laudato Si movement and so on. They own land, for example, in the landscape that I'm working in Nairobi, as GLFX Nairobi, we have, it's an area, the Nairobi area, but most of the land there is owned by the Catholic Church. So that's they own the land, they have the structures for mobilization. And then the great thing is that they push for environmental stewardship in all the faiths, push for environmental stewardship. And you can see that with Laudato Si, you can see that in Kenya, they're great examples of how they've been able to mobilize people around landscape restoration, the Catholic bishops, some of them pledging to, grow like 1 million trees. We have the Anglicans now, they have a target of growing like 15 million trees by next year. So those are great. I know it's focused on tree growing, but I think it's a step in the right direction. You see, they're catching the message, they're catching the vision, and it's all about us, like as scientists, as practitioners, just developing the capacity and providing them with the correct resources, because we know that restoration is beyond tree growing and tree planting. So just giving them that. And another great example is the EcoSeek in India, who have a network of more than 300 microforests. So just leveraging that power, and we're doing that working in our landscape. We have now set up an Ololua Forest Faith and Restoration Network, and it's a platform bringing together mostly faith-based actors working in the area, but then also other individuals, private sector, and so on, just trying to create a platform for mobilizing people for the restoration of that forest, for learning, because like I did mention before, there's that need to build the capacity of the different faith actors when it comes to landscape restoration in general. So I would say that is something that a story of success, and something that we definitely can leverage on for forest and landscape restoration. Thank you.
No, perfect. And thanks for having such solid examples in there as well. But I think the emphasis on not just faith-based networks, but also on importance of platforms like GLFX and GLFX Nairobi chapter, I think is something that we can explore some more throughout the day. And I think importance of those local ways for people to engage is part of the spirit of what we're trying to capture here over the day. And I know we'll have more examples in the next few panels. So thank you for your reflections on that. Fernando, I look across the stage to you, to an old friend, and I'm just wondering, we could probably talk forever here now, you and I, about examples from model forests and other landscape initiatives, but I don't know a landscape that you don't know in Latin America through the half of the world's model forests that are in Latin America, that's over 30. What are your reflections about success stories or examples of where things are working that help shine some light on positivity?
Yo pedí que si se me hubiera pasar un par de imágenes, porque dicen que una imagen dice más que 1000 palabras. Entonces quisiera que dos imágenes. La imagen que están viendo es la red latinoamericana de bosque modelo. 32 territorios en América Latina, y hay subredes nacionales como la red brasileña y así. Pero la principal imagen es la siguiente, que habla por sí sola. La siguiente, por favor. The next. Me dieron poco tiempo, entonces voy a pasar esa imagen. Esa es Guatemala. Guatemala viene del náhuatl guatemalán, que significa sitio de muchos árboles. Miren el cambio de uso del suelo en Guatemala desde los años 50, cómo ha ido cambiando, y la zona achurada de color rojo que ustedes ven es donde está el bosque modelo. El bosque modelo, manejo forestal, biosfera maya, trabajado por la Asociación de Comunidades Forestales de Petén, ACOFOP. Es muy importante entender esto. La pregunta es, ¿cómo lograron esto? Y la respuesta no es tan simple, pero la simplifico yo en 3 cosas. El primer punto es una buena gobernanza comunitaria. Es clave. Buena gobernanza. La segunda cosa que es muy importante es darle valor al bosque. Nadie conserva lo que no valora. Y cuando le digo darle valor al bosque, me refiero, hay que hacer cadenas de valor ecosistémicas, de productos que uno utiliza del bosque sin destruirlo. Miren, es el bosque mejor conservado en Guatemala. Pero hay un problema también. Nadie quiere financiar gobernanza. La gente prefiere financiar restauración, o sea, cuando esté destruido. ¿Y por qué no evitar la destrucción del bosque? ¿Por qué no financiar plataformas de gobernanza? Yo iba a poner 3 ejemplos, pero por tiempo yo sé que tengo que referirme solo a esto, porque esto habla por sí solo.
Thanks, Fernando. And I think it's fitting to remember that model forests aren't protected areas, that they do have sustainable use, and that area that was in red on the image, in the very name of the model forest, has sustainable forest management in the name, but also that there were goods and services and forest products that were produced out of that area at the same time as they maintained forest coverage. So I think that we can dig into the examples some more as we go through. I'm looking across to Eunice, and I introduced you as the mayor, but I know that you just recently won re-election as the vice mayor, and a long history of politics continues for you, as well as with the Ulat Watershed Model Forest. What are your reflections here with us today?
For the Philippines, and in particular in Ulat Watershed Model Forest, our experience is truly a transformative journey of the community within the forest. In 2011, prior to this year's, and the experience in our area, as most rural areas in the Philippines, is that of high poverty incidence. About 44% of the poverty rate in our country, and in particular in our province, was experienced. And we observed that a lot of our communities living within the forest actually engaged in illegal logging activities or timber poaching. It was truly challenging because week-long we would be engaging people so that they can learn the importance of environmental conservation, but the difficulty truly was because engaging people needs a transformation in the minds, in the hearts, and of course in their lifestyle. When we engaged our communities through the partnerships of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, as well as the civil society organizations, we realized that the potential for ecotourism in Paranas, in Samar, was there already. We didn't have to change the lifestyle of the people. In the past, the men who used to carry illegal timbers were trained to become both operators and tour guides, and they're now transporting tourists, locally and foreign tourists visiting our town. So they can experience the Olot River as one of the cleanest rivers in Samar and in the Philippines. And right now, as we look at the statistics or the data, the forest cover has been maintained because of the shifting from illegal activities, illegal logging activities. They have now become tour guides. And right now, what we can say is that the experience in governance, forest governance as well as in local governance, is that you have to be able to ensure that people participation is central to any endeavor that will truly mean transformation of people's lives. And we look at the economic development also in this area, because prior to pandemic, the tourist arrivals were only 251, but they peaked to 6,000 tourist arrivals in 2019. And the incomes of the torpedo, this is what we coined the name of the association, as well as the torpedo boat experience. It represents tour operators and for river protection and environmental development organization. And now they have reached to at least 2.4 million in incomes. So I guess what we realize now in governance in the local government is that you have to engage the people. And any environmental conservation efforts will mean nothing if you will not put them at the center of these endeavors.
No, thank you for that reflection. And for anyone that's online, if you haven't seen a video of the torpedo boats from Ulat Watershed Model Forest, I encourage you to go online. There's no better way to cool down on a hot day than to see people both jumping in the river, down through the rapids, as well as the speed of the boat going down. I've seen it in person, and it's very impressive. So thank you for sharing a practical example that's also very fun, in addition to generating economic development. I turn to my left now to Damas, and I'm not sure where we should start. I think we're leaving model forests a little bit and thinking about broader pieces, and I know your history goes everywhere from training hundreds of students over your tenure at University of Laval. Your involvement in the Congo Basin is well known. What are your reflections as you think about next generation of forest leaders and training in highly qualified professionals? Where do your thoughts go?
Oui, merci bien, Patrick, de me passer la parole. En fait, la thématique de cette session sur la trilogie, donc forêt, peuple, planète, cadre très bien avec le concept là, de forêt modèle, qui vise donc une approche holistique de gestion durable intelligente donc des paysages forestiers, tenant compte donc des aspects sociaux, économiques et environnementaux. Mais alors, qui doit faire ce travail-là? Il faut des gens bien formés. Moi, comme représentant de l'Université Laval, en passant, l'Université Laval, c'est la première université francophone ici en Amérique du Nord. Je suis ici avec deux autres collègues et des étudiants dans cet auditoire. Nous visons à former donc une nouvelle génération de leaders qui vont finalement prendre soin de la planète. Et j'ai été beaucoup touché hier avec la présentation du chef algonquin qui disait « L'Homo sapiens est un animal pensant en raison de ses qualités cognitives avancées. » Donc, l'homme, l'humain, c'est le seul animal qui peut penser, communiquer et créer. Donc, l'humain peut à la fois détruire notre planète ou la sauver. Donc, c'est dans ce sens-là que nous intervenons. L'Université Laval, en tout cas, depuis une cinquantaine d'années, intervient dans le bassin du Congo, qui, comme vous le savez, est la deuxième forêt tropicale, la plus importante forêt tropicale au monde après le bassin amazonien. Mais si je prends l'exemple de la RDC qui représente 60% de la forêt tropicale du bassin du Congo, nous avons, en 2008, quand nous avons commencé le projet de formation, il n'y avait qu'une dizaine d'ingénieurs forestiers. Mais avec l'appui que nous avons reçu du gouvernement canadien, nous avons relancé la formation de ces pays, de formation des ingénieurs forestiers dans ces pays. Et aujourd'hui, où je vous parle, la formation a continué et il y a plus de 600 ingénieurs forestiers qui sont formés maintenant dans ces pays. Et je crois que mon collègue Christophe de la FAO est d'accord avec moi que le besoin estimé de la FAO pour ces pays-là comme la RDC, c'est aux environs de 700 ingénieurs forestiers. Donc nous sommes un peu proches d'atteindre cette cible-là de la FAO. J'ai d'autres projets avec lesquels je pourrais partager après, peut-être, dans la suite de nos discussions. Merci.
Merci, Damas. I think the examples and the legacy that's there for the next generation that'll take the knowledge that you've been able to share is remarkable. I know, Christoph, you have a long history with the basin in the facilitation, but your job is different now. And the large task of the UN decade and the role of the FLR mechanism and other of your roles. So I'll leave it to you for the examples where you want to go, but I know you could take it in a number of different directions.
Thank you, Patrick. Before maybe jumping in an example, I would like to just remind few key challenges we are facing. As you know, deforestation and forest degradation are contributing to greenhouse gas emission, soil erosion, water quality and quantity decline, biodiversity loss. And this degradation is affecting billions of people, and it is fully recognized that almost it's costing 10% of the global annual growth product in terms of loss of ecosystem services. We have as well a growing wood production demand. By 2030, it is expecting to grow by 37%. And annually, we have 10.2 million hectares of forest loss based on the last report, Forest Resource Assessment of FAO 2020. We will have maybe an update soon in October 25 with the launch of the new FRA report. Restoration has a huge potential to address those challenges, and it's clearly a cost-effective solution to improve the provision of multiple benefits for both people and nature. This restoration solution is contributing to the Sustainable Development Goal 15, the coming Montreal new Global Biodiversity Framework, and we have this target 2 by 2030 to restore 30% of degraded ecosystem. It's also contributing to the United Nations Strategic Plan for Forest 2017-2030, with a global forest goal to increase the forest area by 3% by 2030. And with the restoration, with impactful restoration, we can address and achieve those challenges and global goals. I would like to highlight few pathways based on my experience, based on the flagship we have selected in the context of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, based on the project implemented by my team on restoration. There is few pathways that we need to combine for impactful restoration initiative. First, we need to balance properly both conservation and production purposes to maximize the benefits both for people and nature, and environmental and socioeconomic benefits. At landscape level, we need to ensure a mix of approaches with a combination of diverse production systems. We have multi-stakeholder approach that are needed because we have users of lands that have different objectives, and you need to find the consensus. And for doing that, you need a strong ownership, governance structures, and business model are based on profitable value chain. If you are proposing restoration option, not profitable at all, you will never manage to have the buy-in of local stakeholders. And you need to empower those local communities and including indigenous people. And we had at the opening yesterday, someone from the indigenous people community in Canada. It was very inspiring. But you need to think about how to improve their livelihood, to improve their food security, their resilience when you are proposing solution. And finally, you need to ensure the quality of and the availability of both planting material, extension services, People need capacity development locally to implement properly their restoration initiative. You need incubation services to help them to develop bankable business, to attract investment. And we need also innovative financial incentive for people. And if you give me one more minute, I would like to illustrate in Philippines, in the context of a project funded by the Korean Forest Service and IKI, the German Ministry of Environment. We supported a model forest, and we tried to combine those pathways in Bohol Island, in the Karud watershed model forest. And the activity implemented were based on a strong governance structure, the Karud Watershed Model Forest Management Council, 7 mayors, 7 municipalities facing issues, landslide, degradation upstream in the watershed, and to help them to restore the area degraded, causing some problem also for agricultural land in downstream. We supported assisted natural regeneration, fire breaks creations, but the planning was done with the council, the management council. The implementation was managed with the support of DNR, the technical service locally on the island, and to support technically, but with people doing their fire breaks, planting crops and fruit trees in their fire breaks to have an incentive to maintain those fire breaks properly. And at the end of the project in 22-23, I am confident that because we had this strong ownership, this governance structure existing of the model forest, and even if the total area restored was not a million hectares, it was a small area, 500, 600 hectares. We have people locally. This is their restoration initiative. They will maintain the site, and I'm sure, I'm not traveling now regularly in Philippines, but I'm sure that in a few years, those fire breaks and those restored landscape will still be maintained by the local population. Thank you.
No, thanks, Christophe. And as I think, rooting the problem, giving us clear of where we might end up as a trajectory and the challenge in front of us, and a solution helps us. And I think we've heard regional examples, a local example. We just heard another example in model forest, but also about, I really like the who will do the work. And so as I think about that together as a package, I look to Laura for a set of closing reflections for not the day, because we do have an exciting panel hosted by Terry Sunderland coming after this one, but I just thought, what's a takeaway or a seed that you might share based on what you've heard here now from others, or that you want those that are online or in the room to think about as we go through these next series of panels as we hand it back to Kelly.
Thanks. Yeah, one key takeaway is people have to be at the center of restoration, at the heart of it, and you have to incentivize them by them benefiting from those efforts. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm gonna leave it there because I think we've had a couple really good examples. I want to thank our panelists for having joined us up here right now. And what I'd like to say is I encourage people to continue throughout the day online, to make sure you pay attention. Online, you can find speaker bios for each of the panelists and the great work that they're doing. I'd like to thank everyone for their reflections, and I'd like to encourage us to keep this conversation going, not just here today, but on the road to Belém, where we know there'll be a strong forest presence, a strong landscape presence, and to find ways to share your story the way that Global Landscape Forum has allowed us here today. So thank you for the reflections, and we'll find a way to share in the next few panels. Thank you. I hand it back to Kelly.